I'm not a panicky, alarmist type person, and I don't do conspiracy theories. But history tells us this country is on the verge of collapse. I will quickly give you the 6 things that lead to the collapse of an empire, in this case, the United States. Ray Dalio studied the rise and fall of empires going back 500 years, and every time, the collapse was followed by the same 6 phases. Phase 1 was a new order rising, strong leadership, solid education, innovation, unity. Yeah, we had that. Post-World War II, when we actually built stuff and invested in people. Phase 2 was peace and prosperity. Productivity booms, the economy grows, people trust in institutions. Well, we had that. The middle class was strong, unions had power, and the government wasn't a fucking punchline. Phase 3 is massive debt and wealth gaps. The rich get richer, and the poor get tax advice like stop buying coffee. Well, we're there, because the top 1% own more wealth than the entire middle class combined. Phase 4, internal conflict and political polarization. Trust erodes, people stop believing in the system. Well, we have one party destroying the country and the others watching. Nobody's solving shit. Phase 5 is the loss of reserve currency status and global power. Dalio said this stage includes excessive debt creation, weakening productivity, and rising internal conflict. Debt? We're at 36 trillion and climbing. We're adding $1 trillion every 100 days. Productivity has slowed drastically. Internal conflict? Well, amongst a million other things, 58% of Republicans still think the 2020 election was stolen. Clearly, we're deep in Phase 5. Phase 6 is collapse, revolt, or radical reset. Dalio said this phase usually brings civil wars, revolutions, or a major restructuring of the system. Now look around. We've had an insurrection attempt, record gun violence, massive protests, jobs plummeting, the military deployed in Los Angeles, election denial, alligator Alcatraz, and even the Supreme Court giving Trump a green light to pretty much do whatever he wants unimpeded. We're not fully there yet, but there are cracks. I like to think I'm a realistic optimist, but since we've already hit 5 phases and we're teetering on 6, I think our only chance of righting the ship is in the midterms. So we better get loud and stay loud, because this MAGA experiment has done nothing but fast track us to be another example in Ray Dalio's book. And if you want to join me on Instagram or Substack, same handle, links in the bio. Remember, I am not the dark left. Together, we're the dark left. Please join me in helping to call out the bullshit and bring some sanity back to the conversation.
So every empire reaches its most violent point right before its collapse. And the US right now is a prime example of exactly that. The US government now deals with every single one of its crises exclusively with violence. There's a homelessness crisis that is answered only by violent policing. Protesters turning to the streets are attacked by militarized police. The US economy has stalled and consumer spending has collapsed, so they bomb and overthrow governments to loot more resources, like in Venezuela. Political stability and legitimacy is collapsing, so what do? Start new wars with Iran and Iceland, of course. And this is not unique to the United States. Every empire reaches its most violent phase just before its collapse. The British Empire saw its most violent years between 1947 and 1955 as it used genocidal violence in places like India, Palestine, Kenya and Malaysia in a desperate attempt to hold on to the colonies that were now in open revolt. The Dutch Empire, and we are being very generous of that title, saw its most intense period of violence from 1945 to 1949 as its empire collapsed in the face of Indonesian independence. France committed some of the most infamous crimes against humanity in Algeria and Vietnam as they fought desperately to try and stop them breaking away from the French Empire. Japan killed more people between 1937 and 1945 than in all the rest of Japanese history combined, and it happened after Japan already knew its empire was collapsing. By the time Nazi Germany began invading all its neighbours in 1939, the Nazi government was already straining from the consequences of uncontrolled corruption, nepotism and rampant cronyism. All things that would only get worse as the wars dragged on. The nationalist Chinese government, the one that still holds Taiwan today, spent years massacring any suspected communists or dissidents in the country in an ultimately futile attempt to hold on to power in China. So what we are seeing happening in the US right now is not new or unique. This is how every empire ends, consumed by violence and extreme corruption, as every person in a position of power seeks to make as much money as they can in the death throes of the capitalist empire. And all the violence and war, including the ICE agents in the streets and the imminent war with Iran, all of it is just a cover for this heist. Trump and the billionaires, the Democrats and the Republicans, none of them care about what happens to America now, only how much wealth they can extract from it during its collapse. This was always America's fate. You can't have an empire run on nothing but violence and extraction forever. And although the next few years will likely be the hardest any of us have ever experienced, just know that the single biggest obstacle to world peace, the single biggest obstacle to sustainable economy and community-focused socialist governments has always been the US empire. and its collapse will mean the entire planet can actually have a chance to turn it all around and build a better world for all of our children. So no matter how bad it gets, do not despair. Stay strong, organize your community, and know that our darkest hour may also be our finest. Anyway, something to think about.
When debts become very large, and there is an economic downturn, and the empire can no longer borrow the money necessary to repay its debts, the financial bubble bursts. This creates great domestic hardships and forces the country to choose between defaulting on its debts or printing a lot of new money. It always chooses to print a lot of new money, at first gradually and eventually massively. That devalues the currency and raises inflation.
So I really did not want to make a video like this, but something feels off. You've probably felt it too. Like, the economy doesn't add up. We just recently revised the job numbers again, and we learned that we actually had 900,000 less jobs than we were originally told between March 2024 and 2025. Stock market kind of feels disconnected from reality. I'm noticing people are angrier and more divided than ever. I've seen some really bad takes on social media about what's really happening, and every day the news feels like there's another sign that the world is coming to an end. Believe it or not, there's a name for this. Some people call it the fourth turning, and that this cycle happens every 20 years or so. Famous economist Ray Dalio says that it's the decline of the US empire, and we're in the last phase of it. But whatever we call it, we all feel it, I think. So today's video is not going to be my usual fancy storytelling and cool editing. I'm going to try to do this in as few takes as possible, and I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to oversimplify a lot of very complex ideas and give you a high-level overview of what I think is really happening, because I don't think this is an accident of how we got here. If you look at what's happening to this country and around the world, not just in the US, but everywhere, and you look at it through the lens of incentives and money, you will understand what led us to this point, and you'll see that this is not random. But what I really hope this video does for you is that it helps you stay sane in a world that feels more and more insane. What we're seeing right now is the glue that held us together slowly coming apart. Things like faith, family, community, property, that's getting weaker and weaker. What we're left with is a system that's built on fragility. And that fragility shows up in two specific places that we see all around us: in economics and our attention. So let me break this down. On the attention side, we've created a system that is designed to find the most effective way to farm our attention. It's called the algorithm. It's all around us. It's on the internet, it's in the news, it's business, it's everywhere. And what data has found is that fear and anger are the two most effective ways to get our attention. They get us to participate, and the word is called engagement. Here's a chart of word usage frequency throughout the years by a popular media company. Pause it and take a look at it, because what you're going to find is usage of words that are divisive and woke went way up. Words like triggering, hurtful, mansplaining, all of these words went up by 500+% since 2010. Now ask,
is America officially broke? The world's biggest superpower is drowning in $34 trillion of debt. Let me explain how bad this is. If you spent $1 million every single day since Jesus was born, you still wouldn't have spent $1 trillion. America owes 34 times that amount. Every citizen, including this baby born today, owes $100,000 to the government. So how do they pay it? They don't. They just print more money. It's a Ponzi scheme. The more they print, the less your money is worth. Other countries are watching. China and Russia are dumping the dollar. The king is falling. Do you trust the US dollar with your savings? Tell me in the comments.
While you're busy debating headlines, the rest of the world has quietly moved on. BRICS is no longer just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's 23 nations now, including Indonesia, with 280 million people. That's almost as big as the United States. And they are all ditching the dollar ditching dependence, and ditching America. Why? Because the US taught them not to trust it. We seize assets. We weaponize sanctions. We've turned the global economy into a loaded gun, and now the world is disarming. The hard truth is that the dollar is fading, the trust is gone, and the empire that once exported dreams now exports denial. Capitalism chases profit. It always has. That's why your factories are in China, your tech is in Taiwan, and your cars soon will be too. The Chinese didn't cheat. They outbuilt, outworked, and outplanned us. They make better electric cars at half the price. But instead of competing, we slap on a 100% tariff. That's not protection. That's panic. The middle class didn't vanish. It was sold off, piece by piece, by the very ideology that promised prosperity. Wages have flatlined for 40 years. Real wages in China have quadrupled. The same leaders who told you capitalism would lift all boats left you drowning while they bought yachts. This is what decline looks like. Minimum wage stuck at $7.25 for 16 years. No country with that much cruelty at the bottom survives long at the top. There are no plans, no solutions, just a dying empire screaming at the world it no longer controls. And the world has stopped listening.